everyone, and welcome back to our Goy You Will Enjoy season. As we're nearing the end of the season here, I heard you loud and clear. You really liked the episodes of the Allies. Ask and you shall receive, because I already have lined up some amazing allies that you'll hear from throughout the fall, and anytime a good ally comes my way, I'll be sprinkling them in throughout our regular People Do You Want to Know programming. What I have prepared for you in the fall is very, very exciting. These are special people, some of whom are really well known and a little controversial, so I think you'll love it. Today's episode features a new friend of mine, Dan Khan. Dan is a Muslim American and U.S. Army veteran who immigrated from a small village in Pakistan to the U.S. as a child. Upon graduating high school, he joined the Army, where he served as a data management coordinator for the Joint Surface Deployment and Distribution Command. The first in his family to earn a college degree, Dan holds a BS in psychology. He's passionate about building bridges across faiths and backgrounds, and he founded the American Peace Committee to promote unity, especially between Jewish and Muslim Americans, by encouraging respectful dialogue without demanding uniformity of opinion. So I had met Dan through social media, and then we ended up meeting in person at a Shabbat dinner I had in Manhattan. I really respect the fact that Dan served. I admire his fierce yet gentle advocacy for Israel and the Jewish people, and I love his demeanor. As you'll hear throughout the episode, he's very calm and definitely wired like someone who studied psychology. In this episode, we discuss Dan's upbringing, his take on Islam, and the importance of coalition building. In the conversation, Dan and I broached the topic of building coalitions with people who may have harmful beliefs. For example, people on the far right of the Jewish Insta or activism spectrum who don't support coexistence with Palestinians but support Israel. Dan says that it's important to build coalitions with the entire spectrum, even if some of the views don't align with yours. And it made me wonder, is your enemy's enemy always your friend? And honestly, I don't know. It's a big question. I think what's hard about the global climate is that hindsight always allows us to critique how decisions were made. History is always looked at through the lens of, these mistakes were made, this was who we hurt. We often look that way at things like Afghanistan and Iraq in America. Many people believe that U.S.'s response after 9/11 was completely disproportionate. In these kinds of moments and discussions, I'm reminded of something Douglas Murray had said on Joe Rogan's podcast, that infamous podcast. He talked about the fog of war. You can see this fog of war in hindsight, but you can't see it when you're in it. And I think that's what we are in today. It's always very easy to critique after the fact, but I don't know that sometimes in the moment, better decisions could be made, because those decisions will be critiqued as well. It's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. In any case, I really enjoyed hearing Dan's perspective and advice, and I'm also so grateful we have allies like him supporting us. Please enjoy this episode. Hello, Dan. Welcome to People Do You Want to Know podcast. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a few months since I've last seen you, and I'm so happy we get to connect again.
Yeah, me too. I think we met first time in person at the Hala event hosted by you and the Hala girls.
Yeah, it was a Shabbat dinner in Chelsea, and I was so happy that you could make it and you could come. You were one of the, if not the only non-Jewish people that were there. And it was like one of those weeks where the news were just really horrible about Israel and anti-Semitism. And I had the Shabbat dinner and you were like, you know what, I'm going to come. And I was so grateful for that.
Yeah, I never miss out on Hala and connecting with people. I think those go so well together. And, any reason to get out the house is good.
You know what? Fair enough. Okay, without further ado, my first question for you is, tell us about yourself. What do you do and how did you get there?
Oof, oh my God. Okay, so my name is Dan Khan. I am a U.S. Army veteran. I live in Brooklyn with two cats, my boys, Latka and Kofta. They're incredible. They're the sweetest cats in the world. And right now, I work as the founder and CEO of the American Peace Committee. That brings together people of all faiths and backgrounds for dialogue on understanding, but not to change opinions, which is my big thing. Because when you try to change people's opinions, they get more deeply rooted in their beliefs. So yeah, that's kind of it.
You are also married to a Jewish woman. Talk to me about what it's like to be an interfaith couple right now.
Yeah, we didn't think about how interfaith we were when we got together. We met through my brother. My wife and him went to college, and then they were in some programs together. Eventually, I started hanging out with them, and then we started hanging out together alone as like friends. Eventually, she asked me out after this one like friends hangout session at where was it? At Medieval Times. We were on the way back home, and she asked, "Hey, you want to go out like as a real date?" And I was like, "Sure." And that was 2020. So we've been together for 5 years now. And that's why our cats are Latka and Kofta. Latka for her Jewish side, Kofta for my Muslim side.
Do you guys ever butt heads on the conflict or not really?
Not at all. So she's Jewish, but she's not super duper Jewish. And I'm Muslim, but I'm not super duper Muslim. So it works out pretty well. We really like the cultural parts of our religions. So more so, the food and the people, the little parties, the hanging out. That's really what our interfaith stuff has been. And we're very similar. It's crazy how similar we are. So a lot of our opinions are the same. We share the same opinion about the Middle East. And then sometimes I do my info dumps because, like, I have ADD, and then she just sits there and listens. And yeah, she agrees with them.
What about the parents?
The parents, they love me because they're very Republican. They're very pro-America. So they're like, oh my God, an army veteran who's like, who does all this cool stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just a chill guy trying to, do something good. So yeah, they love me. They're very nice people. We've gone on several cruises together. And yeah, I got very lucky. Thankfully, everything's going good.
Okay, awesome. Talk to me about your journey coming from Pakistan. I am, like you, also an immigrant, and I came to America as a child. So, although we come from different parts of the world, I understand that it's difficult to come as a child to another country, especially one that's vastly different from your own. Tell me about your experience growing up in America.
I came to the United States with my family in 1999 when I was just 3 years old. So, for all the math geeks out there, I'm sure they could figure out how old I am instantly. So, yeah, it was still the 90s. We originally moved to Texas. And since I was three, I don't really have many memories of Pakistan. I was born in a small mountain village in Kashmir. And it's beautiful. It's fantastic. I recently got to go back for my brother's wedding, which was held there. And that was the first time I had been back to Pakistan in 20 years. So it was incredible. A lot changed, but at the same time, not a lot has changed. Yeah, from Kashmir, we came to the United States to live in Texas, and 9/11 happened. We were living in Texas, and we're fresh Muslims. We, sound Muslim. My parents have accents and very Muslim names. So being in the South at peak at times of Islamophobia when it was really at its highest, they faced a lot of discrimination, and they had a lot of challenges with finding steady work, making friends, and just trying to blend in and assimilate with their Texas surroundings. My brother and I wore like these really thick, giant blue jeans like cowboys, and we had like flannel shirts, and it was great. I was like, yeah, I'm from Texas. This is so cute. But my parents were really, as the adults, they were facing the brunt of it. So eventually we decided to leave Texas and we moved to New York City. There's a Pakistani community here, so we were welcomed. We had some friends here already, so we got, used to living in the big city, moving from Texas. We were kids, so we were very adaptive. And my parents found it easier to find jobs up here where people were a little bit more open, a little bit, less discriminatory. And yeah, we've been here ever since.
It's no secret that you're an ardent supporter of the Jewish people and of peace between Israel and Palestine. I'm curious to know, how did you form your opinion of Jews in Israel, especially as someone who grew up in a Pakistani community? To my knowledge, a lot of Pakistanis are not super supportive of Israel.
Yeah, you're right. So the issue is, growing up, I asked a lot of questions. I was always asking, hey, this doesn't make sense to me, or are we sure this thing in Islam is, is right? Like, how about these things in Judaism or Christianity that are similar, but they came first? I was always asking questions. I never accepted things for how people tell me they are. I always formed my own opinions. And that was about people. If, like, people spread rumors and then I talk to that person, I'm like, none of these rumors are true about this person. People are just making it up because they just don't like this one person. So a lot of that stems to the information we get to social media. Social media right now has been fueling hate between Jews and Muslims, all for the sake of keeping people engaged on their platforms. I think that's one of the main issues. And my algorithms, thankfully, was equal parts pro-Jewish, pro-Israel, and pro-Palestine. So I was able to see early on, there's suffering on both sides. And I'm not going to align myself in one direction that completely ignores the suffering of another, because no one has a monopoly on suffering. And, we in our communities like to pretend we do, because I see Muslim kids, I see Muslim families, and I'm like, they look just like me. We're genetically so closely related. But at the same time, it's like, who am I to disregard other people? These people also have families. So many people are going to Israel, and you see a person like the lone soldier Omer. He was an American, like through and through, studied here, everything, and then he chose to serve in the IDF and was unfortunately killed, and his body is still held captive by Hamas in the tunnels. So he has a family. I've met his family. It's devastating hearing their opinions, and they're just one of many families that are going through this. So it's about getting away from the algorithms that want us to hate each other. And it's about radical empathy, where even if we don't know somebody at all, we can still put ourselves in their shoes and understand their suffering to a small extent.
I'm curious your opinion on the state of Islam, because something that to me, to an outsider, this is a sincere question from my end. It feels like a lot of the Muslim world has been hijacked by these ideals of hating Jews, believing Israel should be destroyed. And then you have people that are like, that's not Islam. People like Louay al-Sharif and, imams who have spoken up about the fact that Islam has been hijacked and that people are not practicing the faith as it is intended, and that we have to go in a different direction. What do you feel as a Muslim person today? Is that true?
That is absolutely true. Absolutely, 100%. We're seeing that if we look closely, Islam has been hijacked for not just now, but for hundreds of years for political gain. And it is people who are pretending to be religious, and they put on the garb, they speak how Muslims think they should speak. They say specific things from the Quran or from hadiths, but they're doing it for very selfish reasons. They're doing it for control, for oppression. And one of the things that controls populations the most is having an enemy. And Islam, you need an enemy to direct all the hate away from the political leaders and onto somebody else, the scapegoat. And unfortunately, that turns into Christians, Jews, and as we've seen in places like Syria very recently, we've seen other Muslims. And we see that with myself and Louay al-Sharif as well. It's like, if you're a Muslim and you're speaking out, you're against the status quo, you're a target of hatred as well. So we really need to break away from that. And this political stuff that has really taken over the religion is a toxic root, and it's getting deeper and deeper ingrained every single day. These people make more money, they have more power, they're getting more followers. People are converting, people are being born into Islam, and then they're being taught, hey, this is the hatred you need to preach, this is the hatred you need to believe. It is a very deep-seated issue, and I hope that one day we can come around it. But right now, I don't see a way unless Islam really decides to change from within itself. No one from the outside is going to be able to change it. We need to change Islam from when it's within itself, to be more accepting, to understand that if we don't adapt and be kinder and actually want to coexist, that we might be the ones to be fighting to exist in the future.
Look, I think that's super fair. And growing up in school, I used to learn that in Saudi Arabia, women would get stoned if they walked by themselves on the street or were forbidden from driving a car. And today, Saudi Arabia is, on the forefront of trying to enable the Abraham Accords and make peace with Israel and the Western world. So I think it can be done. It's definitely a big undertaking. And to your point, I don't think a lot of Arab nations are there yet at all. Like, we're looking at decades of more resistance to change before there's something meaningful.
Absolutely. If, one country can lead the way, like Saudi Arabia is doing, as problematic as they might be themselves, it is nice to see, it is refreshing to see that their leaders see the benefits of coexistence. Because as humans, we need diversity to thrive as a species. We can't be homogeneous in our thinking, in our cultures, in our religions. We need this diversity, especially in something like diversity of thought. We need diversity of opinions. And it's really hard to get that when you're all stuck in the same bubble, whatever that bubble might be, whether it's religion or culture, country that people live in. When Saudi Arabia does business with Israel, it's like they make money that can benefit their society, and then they're making jobs for Muslims as well as others. They're making jobs for Muslim families, for Muslim kids. They're improving the life of Muslims in their country by doing business with people that aren't Muslim. It's fantastic to see. And that's really what our thinking should be. That's really how we drive humanity forward.
And tell me a little bit about your service. We're recording this in an interesting time. I don't think this time is like a now thing. It's been this way for many years, but American society feels very demoralized, and people hate on those who serve in the military. Like, the more progressive you are, the more you don't support law enforcement, army, anything like that. And you're a veteran and you served. And it's almost like ironic because you grew up in this era where there was so much Islamophobia, and you did the opposite. You were like, I'm going to serve this country. Yes, this country has a problem, but I believe in American values and I want to serve. Tell me about your service and how are you feeling now as a veteran?
I talk about my time in the service constantly, and I'm always bringing up stories and nonsense. Even now, it's been 10 years now, almost, actually more, because I joined in 2014 when I was, 17 years old. So it's been a while since I've been out as well. It was my original dream job. I loved it. And growing up post 9/11, I was no stranger to, other kids saying terrorist jokes, and I think they're fun. It's fine. You grow up with that. It's water off your back. You make jokes back. You build friends, and you have to understand that sometimes it's not out of hatred. It's either out of ignorance or just for fun, and then you get thicker skin because of it. So I was one of the first Muslim and Pakistani person that a lot of my army buddies had ever met. They would tell me, they would be like, "Hey, I've never met a brown person like you." They've met, people from Mexico, people from Europe, but then they're like, "Hey, you're Muslim, you're Pakistani, your country's right next to Afghanistan, where we go and where we deploy." It was really unique because in New York City, there's Pakistani Muslims everywhere. So there's like huge neighborhoods of just Pakistani Muslims. So being there, it was fascinating. I got to represent myself and my community in an amazing way. I showed them that, hey, look, I have a sense of humor. I'm very Americanized. I love hot dogs and hamburgers just like anybody else. We watched the same cartoons growing up, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And all that nonsense. I thought it was great. I loved my time in the service. I did 3 years on active duty, and then I was medically discharged because I got injured. I was discharged in 2017. So right now it feels like it was yesterday. When I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I was just going through all that. And now it's 2025. It's so many years later. They go by so fast. It's crazy. So me and my army buddies had a ton of fun. We had a lot of fun. We were the screw ups. We were the goofballs who, I'm not going to say we didn't take our job seriously, but we screwed around, and sometimes we would get in trouble, but it was worth it because we made sure that we were happy. We made sure that we were, entertaining each other, that people around us were happy, because it can get a little depressing being stuck in the military. A lot of prisons, they form their rules and structure around the military, which is interesting to see. I was watching a prison documentary and I was like, these are all rules adapted from the military. So, you have to build camaraderie. You have to do it yourself. You have to hang out with your friends. And it was the best time of my life. I have such vivid memories of going on little missions throughout the country, stateside, being to so many states doing logistics for the Army, whether it's transporting cargo, transporting people, transporting weapons. But long story short, it was an amazing time. So right now it's a little hard being a veteran because we see so much hate, and I get hate for being Muslim but pro-Israel, and then I get hate for having served in the military, which to me was an honor. So many people try joining the military and get rejected. I'm extremely proud of my service, so it's a little disheartening to see people that don't support it. And I don't have to support the military. I don't have to support the industry or the corporations that profit off of the military and the service members. I support the people. I support people like myself who are just kids trying to, get out of the house, who are having a good time. Back then, it was a little difficult because it was closer to 9/11. People were more worried about that. But now it's shifted to something we saw when soldiers were coming back from Vietnam and they were called baby killers. People hated them. It's a little tough. I would like to see people recognize the humanity in soldiers. They do a lot, and not every unit is a combat unit. There's a lot of humanitarian units that only exist to help out during hurricanes and earthquakes. There's a lot of nuances to it, and it's an incredibly complex and diverse group of people. I would love to see more love towards them.
I think it definitely upsets me because to be able to sit there and call somebody coming back from the field a baby killer is a huge position of privilege that you only get to do because somebody else went and worked and was in the service, right? You only are able to complain because somebody's out there risking their life by being in the service. And to have the gall and the audacity to criticize someone who represents our country. And I understand that not all wars are fought fairly and that there are decisions that are made by our government that are wrong. But that's not an individual soldier's choice. They're just doing their job. And to criticize an individual who's put their life at risk to protect you is always something that baffles me.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuances behind it. And as a veteran, I'm still really happy to be a veteran. I love it. It's part of my personality. It's major part of my identity. It's something that I can never get rid of. I go to the VA for my health care, and I'm very fortunate for that. I'm a disabled veteran, so whenever I have paperwork, that's always mentioned on there. I am really happy to have served, and I know most veterans are on the same boat. Not everybody agrees with me who has served, but again, that's a privilege we get as a first world country. You can serve and not have been happy to serve. You can see soldiers on the street and not be happy with what they're doing. But with all that, we should be self aware and recognize that they're still human beings.
And I want to pivot a little bit to talk about American Peace Committee. Walk me through the type of work that you do. From what I've seen, some of it sounds like true grassroots work, like food, clothing, and toy drives. But also, I'm interested in your interfaith and intercultural events. And then to piggyback off of that, I want to get your advice. As a non-Jewish person who supports Israel, the reality is you're the minority, it feels like, at this rate, especially in America today. What do you think works in having difficult conversations with people and changing people's minds? I know you talked about you don't want to change people's beliefs, but we gotta, otherwise they're supporting terrorism.
Yeah, it all started during the last presidential election. So I was seeing, again, the same thing we see on social media every election cycle and every time something happens in the Middle East. Social media and the 24-hour news cycle picks it up and they spin it however they want so that they can make money. And I was saying, this is the same stuff we've seen our whole lives when we see presidential elections. People with horrible campaigns and slogans, mocking each other, hating each other, spreading division. And I thought, while they're doing that, we need people to do the opposite. We need someone who's bringing people together and not in a way that we're fighting or, we're getting clicks off rage bait, but, we can try to understand how the other person thinks. That's what we really need. And it was really the election that pushed me over to actually go out and do the paperwork and all the creating the website and nonsense stuff like that, to have a platform where people can do that. They can have the dialogue. They can speak to each other. They can go in knowing that the person that they're speaking with isn't going to debate them and try to argue with them and change their beliefs, but instead they want to know how the other person thinks. And through that is the first step to changing someone's mind. And if we really want to change someone's mind, we have to just listen to them first. We have to understand how they think. And we can go into that much better if we're framing it in a way that we're not trying to change someone's beliefs, but we're just understanding them first. Through that, we can come up with plans. We can devise strategies where it's like, oh, this person doesn't believe that October 7th happened. And then we can show that person the real footage that has come from Hamas itself uploading what they did on October 7th. We can show them that. And then if they change the goalpost, if they move the goalpost, we can be like, okay, cool, let's just address that next. And then let them know, like, hey, what you're doing isn't very helpful for coexistence. It's not good for dialogue. And if you want to be someone who wants to change minds, you have to be able to listen first. So with things like that, I was like, people need something. They need an organization. They need someone to do the grunt work first so that they have somewhere that's already set up where if they're open to it, they can come, they can speak to others. Going off on like a little side thing, I was at an event with Mazi Pilip, who's a politician out of Nassau County. And we were at an event together and we had protesters in our audience and they had created little wanted posters for us. They were calling Mazi a baby killer because she served in the IDF. It was really disheartening to see, but I went in with that and I was like, I hear you. You're seen. I recognize what you're saying, and I'm not going to try to change your mind. Here is what Mazi and I believe. Here are the facts. And it didn't work instantly where, people just outright said, okay, cool, I denounce Hamas. But weeks later, in my DMs on Instagram, I received several messages from different people saying they were at that. They were one of the protesters, how it changed their mind, how they didn't outright admit that they were wrong, but that in a way they saw the light and they saw how using empathy can be a tool. And that's what I'm trying to do with American Peace Committee, using empathy as a tool to get people together to talk and then somewhere somehow down the road change their way of thinking. But that's much further. The first step is just listening.
Do you teach this method?
Not really. I feel like if I could get my thoughts down on paper, I would. But for now, not really.
You talked about an experience where you kind of started turning people around on their beliefs. And there were people that clearly had the humility to realize it and to message you. A lot of people are not wired that way. But I think with your approach, it's possible, even if they don't acknowledge it, that they feel it inside, because that's already important in and of itself. Are there any other pieces of advice that you have, especially to your Jewish peers, around what they can do? Because the argument I'm up against, even with other Jews, for example, anti-Zionist Jews, is you can never view this conflict fairly because you were born into your identity, which inherently biases you to support Israel and care about Israel and Jews more than you care about Palestinians and Gaza. You will never have a fair, objective view of this conflict because you're part of the identity that's involved. And I don't agree with that, first of all, but I don't really know how to prove them otherwise, because if I tell them, okay, but let's look at the facts that I bring up to you, let's look at the merit of what I'm saying, irrespective of who said it, it's still not breaking through because they're stuck on, oh, you're a Jew, so you're already going to have a specific point of view.
Sometimes it takes hearing it from a different voice that isn't Jewish or Israeli. And the very unfortunate thing about real life and living on this planet is I have to remind myself, and I think like everybody should remind themselves, that you can't change everybody's minds. There's some people whose opinions you will never change. There's some people who will die believing in what they believe, whether it's the most incorrect thing you have ever heard. They will go to the ends of the earth to defend it, and there's facts that they will die with. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. We can't change everybody. The best we can do is listen to them, try to understand them, and if they're not willing to listen to us, then we have to move on, unfortunately. It is in part a numbers game where the more people you reach out to, the more likely you are to have some positive feedback eventually. So there's some people, even if they are Jewish but anti-Israel, with how deeply ingrained they are in their beliefs, no matter how many facts you present, no matter how many times you say, there's like dozens upon dozens of Muslim countries, Arab countries that are fully Muslim, and then non-Arab Muslim countries all around the world. But there's only one Jewish nation. Why can't they just have that? And no matter how many times you bring up really important facts, they're not hearing you. They're lost causes. It is very unfortunate to say, but that's our reality. We're not going to break into people, but they're very good for learning from, because we can learn how to speak to somebody that's just a brick wall. We can see what reactions we get when we say certain things. We can see how they try to spin the facts when we, tell them, there was a peace treaty before October 7th, and Israel wasn't the one that violated it. And we can tell them about how the hostages are human beings that are held there without cause and are being tortured every single day. And, they have families that miss them. They're not going to listen to that. It's unfortunate. There's no advice I can give to change their minds. It's just something we have to live with.
And I'll add that part of this demoralization that we're experiencing in society today has made me notice that people have a hard time seeing the bigger picture. Like, I'll illustrate my point. During World War II, the Allied forces attacked the Germans, and there were innocent German civilians that died as a result of this war. Many of them. It's tragic. But that didn't change the fact that the Allied forces did the right thing to destroy Nazi Germany, right? Even if there were civilian casualties as a result, overall, it was definitely still the right thing to do. Okay, and we don't dispute that. We don't argue. We don't see rallies of, remember the innocent Germans who died as a result of World War II, because there is like a right side of history, kind of. But when it comes to this conflict, especially anti-Zionist Jews are willing to go such extreme lengths and do all the mental gymnastics in the world to be like, but Israel killed civilians, but Israel did this, but Israel did that. This is all true, and this is tragic, and there has to be law and ethics applied to war, which is why we have these policies. But my point is, even when all of this is true, Israel is still doing the right thing. And Israel is still abiding by law. So it's just hard for me to understand how people don't see that and the exceptions that they're willing to make when it comes to this conflict in particular.
Yeah, we need to also take a look at it through a psychological lens. We need to think about the immense positive reinforcement they receive when they say things like this. So if they go onto social media and they say, I'm a Jew and I hate Israel and I wear a keffiyeh, they're going to get likes, clicks, views like they have never seen. Right now, this is what the algorithm wants to push. It is what they're making the most advertising dollars off of. So they're going to push that agenda. They're going to show that to people that engage with it, that leave really nice comments. I'm on the other side of that, where if I say, I'm Muslim, but I'm pro peace and pro Israel. And when I get engagement on it, I'm like, oh, cool, that feels great. But, self awareness plays into that, because I can still acknowledge the suffering of Palestinians, as every single Jew I've ever spoken to has. Yeah, when these anti-Zionist Jews are speaking, when they are given a platform, it gives them a dopamine rush. They love it. And it's not something that your brain has evolved to lose. They're not going to want to lose that. They want that. They want to keep that. And our brains have evolved to keep that dopamine, because it's telling us that, hey, this was necessary for survival. And right now, it's not necessary for survival anymore, but it just makes us feel good. And I think if we frame it like that, we can understand where they're coming from. If they're people that didn't have many friends before, if they didn't have a platform before, but were trying to make a career out of social media somehow. And now they're given that, and they're given that through the conflict in the Middle East. I think it does do a disservice to the Jewish people when they're out there saying this, because there's only one Jewish nation. And it's fantastic. And while people do get killed, while civilians do get killed, we should be doing everything we can to mitigate civilian casualties. It is still a reality, not just a reality of war, but just reality of living on Earth. People can step onto the sidewalk and get hit by a car. And then, sometimes there's no justice in that. Sometimes people are in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I think it's also specifically the reality of living in the Middle East. Like, Israelis know where they live. They know that they're going to have to serve in the IDF, and they know that they're putting their lives at extra danger by choosing to live in a place that's war stricken and experiences terrorism. As much as I agree with you about the anti Zionist side of it, I do think the side that's like super conservative and right wing within the Jewish activism world is second side of the same coin, and both are causing damage. The influencers on the other end are also receiving that positive reinforcement to keep going and saying, finish them, and Gaza's going to become the next Disneyland. Like, those things are not conducive to resolving the conflict. And this polarization that we see amongst the Jewish people is also the same trend that we see in mankind today.
One of the things is I am, in a weird way, unfortunately, fortunately, close friends with some of the very far right protesters, and they come to my events to support me, invite me to their homes. I've met their families, and some of it is an act, fortunately. It's an act where they know that if they act that way in public, they get tons of views on social media. They are still nice people, and I support them in a weird way. Now, hear me out. We need a multifaceted approach to defeating Hamas and their supporters. And that involves a full spectrum of pro Israel people. That involves people who are very far right, who are screaming, kill them. But then we need people in the middle who are, pro Israel, but then they recognize the suffering. They're very intelligent. They're great. And then people far left, I guess. You need all that. You need the full spectrum in order to defeat the Hamas supporters, because the pro-Palestinian people that go out, they face people who are doing the counter protesting, yelling in their faces. They see that. It's like the good cop, bad cop idea. So they get that. And then if they hear my message, if they hear another pro-Israel Muslim, we tend to be more empathetic, more reasonable, more down to earth, and willing to listen to them and acknowledge them. So when those protesters in the event with Mazi and I, when they came, they were screaming, they were angry, they were expecting us to fight back. And when we didn't, they were disarmed. They lost their weapons. When we didn't shout back, when they had their phones in hand recording us, I was just sitting back. And when it was my turn to speak, I would let the protesters fully read their little speeches off their index cards, fully read it. And then I would say, I hear you. You are seen. Your feelings are valid, because all that is true. Like, they're very valid and their concerns are valid. But then I make my counterpoint and I let them know how I feel in an empathetic way, where it's not just pro-Israel, it's pro-everybody. And that empathy turns them around. They go from the bad cop yelling in their face at a different event to somebody who's like, yeah, Palestinians are suffering greatly. It's terrible. And the best thing we can do for them is to listen to Israeli Jews who want to coexist. So that's my devil's advocate argument, that we need them. We need this full range of pro-Israel support.
I think what you're referring to is almost like coalition building, building coalitions with parts of the movement that don't necessarily uphold all of your values, but uphold enough where it makes sense to have them on your side. But then isn't that like how you get bus bombers on the other end of it? Because they're building coalitions with the terrorists,
God.
right? What do
Yeah,
we do?
yeah, that's true. And that's something we need to be very careful with. We need to make sure we're vetting the right people. We're making sure we're building the right partnerships. We're also making sure that on the government side, we're doing the intelligence work to know that sometimes your allies, your coalition members, whoever it might be, sometimes they're doing their own thing. And you have to do your intelligence work. You have to keep your ear to the ground and know that sometimes people aren't 100% trustworthy. And you can expect things like that. So if we're doing our intelligence work correctly, we can mitigate them and hold people accountable. And that's something the United States has been good at. We spy on our allies, which is a known fact. It's a known thing that the CIA and the US intelligence agencies have been wiretapping political leaders that we consider our friends. We do that for our safety because we know we can't trust anybody 100%. It's a unfortunate reality.
So then I think where we net it out is you're saying it's valuable to build coalitions with groups of the movement that don't necessarily uphold all your values and sometimes even contradict some of your values, so long as the benefit of the coalition is higher than the drawback of their negative values. And then you also have to kind of do your research on them to ensure that they're still a valuable ally to you. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. That's spot on.
That's a very military approach. I mean, we just went full circle over there. Now, as part of this Goy You Will Enjoy season, every guest gets to ask me, a Jew, any question you have about being Jewish or this current conflict. It can be as simple or as complicated as you would like. What is the question that you have for me?
Okay. So, with the current conflict and you being Jewish, instead of asking about Israel, where do you see the Palestinian people and Palestine in 10 years?
Oh man, this is a complicated one. Sorry in advance if I butcher it because I'm not an expert, but I'm going to try my best. I mean, we are in a pivotal moment for Palestinian people. And I think everything hinges on whether or not a true peace partner emerges on behalf of Palestinians. Throughout history, we have seen that if there was any peace partner on the Palestinian side, there would already be a Palestinian state that would be autonomous. They would have all the money in the world to build themselves into the next Dubai, and all the infrastructure that they need would be there for them. I do firmly believe, and I've seen this confirmed by so many different guests that are, academics and experts on this, that unfortunately we have never seen a true, sincere peace partner, because the Palestinian side has always been plagued with some subset of people that want to continue terrorism. And what I want to be clear on, and people can disagree with me as much as they want, is that I firmly believe that the groups that have been representing the Palestinians since the founding of the State of Israel, their primary goal is not to create a Palestinian state. It is to destroy the Jewish one. And those are not the same, right? Their goal is not to create a country for Palestinians. They could have done that 15 times at this rate. Their goal was just to eliminate their Jewish neighbors, which is different. And so in the next 10 years, we have so many forks in the road we could go. If a true Palestinian peace partner emerges, there will be a Palestinian state, there will be peace. If a peace partner does not emerge, there will not be a Palestinian state, there will not be peace, and Israel will take control of Gaza. I'm already feeling like it's highly likely Israel will take control of all of Gaza. I have never seen in history that a group of people governed by a terrorist group attack a sovereign country and are rewarded with their own state on the other end of that conflict. I don't think that's what's in the cards for Palestinians right now, unless there's a compelling case that, yes, there's somebody like the UAE or Saudis that are going to come in and clean it all up and take control of the Palestinians and make sure that there's peace. Those are my theories. I'm not feeling optimistic about it, though, for the Palestinians right now. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think we need to understand what their goal is. When you establish what somebody's goal is, we can see what they're gonna do to get to that. And right now, it seems like their goal really is to destroy the Jewish people instead of saving Gazans and building a nation for Palestine. They're not doing any of that. It's about destruction and hatred, and it goes to their leadership. I know a lot of the people there, some of them are supportive of this, but some are not. It's the way it's going right now, it's going to lead to more death and destruction for them. There's no way that they can keep up the fighting with a nation like Israel. Israel is so well funded and well armed that a tiny place like Gaza or, Palestine as a whole, no way that they can keep fighting. And something I've noticed with Muslim leadership is that they're very willing to sacrifice their populations for their agenda. So if we don't want Palestinians to keep dying, we need to come up with something that actually works. And right now, it doesn't seem like they're trying to do that.
So our episode, you and I, it's coming out a few weeks after I had a really powerful conversation with Hamza Hawidi, who is a Gaza-born Palestinian that now resides in Germany and does peace activism for Israel and Palestine. And in talking to him, I kind of realized that nobody even knows the true aspirations of like Palestinian people. Like, let's imagine all of Hamas operatives are taken out. They don't exist anymore. If we went to the streets and asked people, what do you want? What is your primary goal? What is your secondary goal? No one even knows what the true sentiment of Palestinians is. And it really depends. Like, maybe their primary goal is X if these conditions are true. But if one of those conditions is not true, suddenly their goal changes to, I don't know, something else. And it's very hard to pinpoint the reality of it, because in the conversation, I kind of asked him, I was like, what do Palestinians really think about this stuff? How do they feel? And what do you think we should do? Like, if so many Palestinians don't support Hamas and want peace, like, how do we get them to remove Hamas, resist? And he was saying things that it felt almost contradictory. Like, he would be like, we need to stop viewing Palestinians as victims. They're people who have agency, who can do things. Gaza is not an open air prison. There are societies there and an economy and a store and jobs, and they can do things. And then later he would be like, well, we can't expect anything of the Palestinians because they're oppressed by Hamas. And it's like, which one is it? Are these people who will take control of the situation, or are these people who cannot and they need somebody else to step in? And I couldn't figure out the reality of it. And I think this is the kind of vicious cycle that we're in. We don't know what this group of people wants.
Like with a lot of conflicts in the Middle East, it's a quagmire. We don't know what's going to fully come out of it if, we make certain decisions. And there's a lot of Palestinians. You see these man on the street interviews where they go to Gaza and then they ask, hey, what do you believe? And they're like, oh, we hate Jews, we hate gays. Yeah, we've seen these interviews where people are interviewing them, but they're saying some not so nice things. And then on the other hand, you have fantastic people like Hamza Hawidi who have been imprisoned by Hamas, tortured by Hamas for speaking out against them, for being in protests. And now his life is in danger because of his activism while he was still in Gaza. It's crazy. Yeah, it's one of those unfortunate situations where there's a very uncertain future for them. And if they're not sure about their goal, it's going to lead to, them not existing, unfortunately. They need to establish where they want to be, and the majority needs to support it.
Yeah, that's the sad truth of it. Listen, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. And how can people connect with you on social media and learn more about your work?
Yeah, absolutely. My Instagram handle is @its_Dan Khan, common spelling, normal spelling. We, post everything on that, and then with whoever I collaborate with is on my Instagram. Besides that, that's really all I use.
Okay, awesome. And if your organization is having events in New York, I want to know about it so I can attend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You'll be there.
Thanks for doing this, Dan.
No problem.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People You Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram @People You Want to Know.